Thank you, Bob. Jesus, the miracle worker. Well, when you return from holiday, you often face some unexpected problems. There's challenges, don't you? That was a case, you can see something up there. Because we were only away 6-7 days. We went away like full 12, 14 days. But before we left and after we came back, it was that raining days. It was rain before we left and then heavy rains of the storm. And before we went away, I did check my swimming pool cleaner. I just pull out and I didn't empty, but it was just a little bit there. I thought 2 weeks should be fine. However, when I didn't check immediately after we returned because of rain. You don't want to go out in the middle of rain. I didn't do it. Later, I discovered that cleaner's bag, whether you can see there, it was full. Not only full, but it's torn apart. You might have that experience. And I realized that if I had checked it as soon as we got back, or better yet, if I emptied the bag just before we left, it might not have broken because it's empty enough. It's half empty, And that got me thinking about today's passage where the net breaks because there are so many fish, a sign of abundance, sign of blessing. In contrast, my swimming pool's cleaner's bag, it broke for entirely different reasons, neglect and overuse. And I reflected on this. I saw a connection with the story of Jesus and the miraculous catch of fish. And I think there's something about timing. There's something about preparation, about how we respond to the abundance, how we respond to the challenges that God places before us. It is a reminder that we cannot always anticipate what will happen, but our response, whether to a blessing, whether to the challenges, they matters greatly. Our response matters greatly. Luke's story of Jesus calling the first disciple is unique among synoptic gospels, among Matthew, Mark, and Luke. While these first two synoptic gospels, Mark and Matthew, just speaks of Jesus walking alongside Sea of Galilee, and Jesus abruptly, all of a sudden, he calls Andrew, James, and John to follow him, which is in Mark 4, Matthew 1. But only Luke includes stories of miraculous catch of fish that comes before the call. It is important to note that Jesus starts calling his disciples from those who make their living on the sea and at the sea. These laborers, fishermen, they were the lowest level of Romans' hierarchy of occupations. They did not own any land, and fishermen had to pay not only for the right to fish in Emperor's Lake, but also they had to pay a toll on every fish they caught when they sold them. So there are always taxes they have to pay. Their work was physically demanding and dangerous, often leaving them with barely enough money just to sustain their family needs. In today's reading, Luke's Gospel, this is not Simon's first encounter with Jesus, this new rabbi. Jesus has already been to Simon's home in Capernaum, and he had healed his mother-in-law in chapter 4. Perhaps that explains Simon's willingness to let Jesus use his fishing boat as floating pulpit. Simon had been fishing all night with no success. Then working from early morning hours, cleaning his nets. Most likely he was exhausted. And he was looking forward to going home, looking forward to getting some sleep. So it must have felt like a bit of hassle when Jesus climbed into his boat and asking him, put out a little way from the shore. Nevertheless, Simon, did what Jesus asked. Well, Luke does not tell us what Jesus taught the crowds that morning at the beginning of the reading before. The focus is on what follows. Jesus is telling Simon to put out into the deep water, let down this net for the catch. And Simon clearly thinks that this is going to be a waste of my time. In fact, he is a professional fisherman. We can almost feel the frustration in his voice when he responds, Master, we have worked all night, but have caught nothing. But then he continues, Yet if you say so, I will let down the net. And we know what happens next. The net so full of fish that they begin to break. The boat so full of fish that they begin to sink. And seeing what is happening, Simon is overwhelmed with fear and wonder, sensing that this man, he has something remarkable. Sensing that he is in the presence of divine power, he responds by falling down at Jesus' knees and begging him, saying, Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. In the middle of his usual workday, and after a tough night at work, Simon has suddenly encountered by someone who changes everything. And now, amazed by the power of God displayed in the abundant catch of fish, Simon is immediately aware of his sinfulness. He is aware of his unworthiness. And he sees overwhelming differences between God's power manifest in Jesus and his own mortal, his own compromised life. And Jesus responds to Simon by saying, Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people. You will be catching people. The Greek word, original word for catching used here, it's called zoguron. This word is very rare in the New Testament, but it means to catch alive, to catching something alive. Of course, fishing with nets, it's a matter of catching fish alive, but those live fish, they would soon be dead. And here Jesus calls Simon and his partners to a new vocation of catching people so that they might live. Life-giving vocation of being caught up in the God's mission of salvation for all. Although they just have brought in the greatest catch of their fishing careers, Simon Peter, James, and John leave those boatload of fish. They leave them behind and follow Jesus. Their encounter with Jesus has completely reoriented their lives. And this text is offering rich possibilities for reflecting on how God calls ordinary people, just like us, to discipleship and to mission, to something extraordinary. After all, there is nothing particularly special about Simon Peter and his fishing partners. They are simple fishermen. They are simply doing what they did every day. They are just going about their day, cleaning their nets after long and discouraging night when Jesus shows up, when he steps into their ordinary lives and changes everything. Above all, we must recognize that this story marks, from this story, it is a turning point in the life of Jesus. Until now, Jesus, he has been preaching in the synagogues, the meeting place of Jewish people. Now, he is at the lakeside. Undoubtedly, he would return to the synagogues, but eventually the synagogues, they would shut their doors to him. We know that. The lakeside, open road would become his church, and the boats would serve as his pulpit. He would go wherever people were willing to hear his message. When synagogue institution doors were closed, Jesus chose to walk the wide open road. And there is no need to think that Jesus created fish there at that moment. In the Sea of Galilee, there were large schools of fish that covered the sea like a solid mass. If you see this Galilee, you can spot that group of fish. Perhaps Jesus' keen eyes spotted school of fish quickly, and his sharp observation in the night was considered miraculous. As I put there, having eyes to see, we must have eyes to truly see. Many people saw steam rising from the boiling kettle, but only James Watt envisioned a steam engine from that. Many people saw apples falling from the trees, but only Isaac Newton, he pondered this and he discovered the law of gravity. Those who with eyes to see, the world is filled with miracles. When Jesus spoke, Peter, although he was very exhausted, Peter was willing to try again. Many people face defeat in life because they give up too quickly, just moments before success could be achieved. The night had passed. It was no longer the optimal time for fishing. All circumstances seemed unfavorable for them. Yet he said, despite the situation, because you say so, we will try again. We will try again. Too often we delay the action and waiting for the perfect moment. If we wait for the perfect conditions, we may never begin. To experience a miracle, we must trust Jesus' words and we must take on what seems impossible. This author from Yugoslavia, called Boris Lev Pakic, if anyone, is that close enough? The Pakic, he spent 6 years in the prison because he had this anti-government movement. And those 6 years in the prison, he only had the Bible. The book only, he had those long time, he was only given Bible as his material. And he used this time to shape this book called The Time of the Miracle. So those time he read the Bible, he became a master of the story. And in this book, Time of the Miracle, he was retelling New Testament miracles from the perspective of those who received them. So he was writing, this is a novel, not a non-fiction. He was writing as if he was the one who received the miracle, and he goes on the story after their experience. Such as he talked about transformation of water into the wine in Cana. He's talking about Jesus healing the blind man, raising Lazarus from the dead. And what is surprising in this book, what he wrote, was most of them who received this miracle, who experienced this miraculous thing, most of them are not as grateful as you might expect. In fact, for many, miracle disrupts their lives and leaves them unhappy, disoriented, and even bitter. That changed their lives in different way. For example, in this book, Lazarus, we know that he raised from the dead. Lazarus does not rejoice at being given life again. Instead, Lazarus struggles with the burden to having to die twice, unable to understand why he was brought back into the world filled with suffering. Miracle of his resurrection becomes actually a source of anguish rather than joy for him. And then there is a blind man who after being healed, he actually finds sight of the world unbearable. When he sees something, he finds not pleasant. He was content with his blindness. He shielded from harsh reality of the life. But now the ugliness of the world overwhelms him, leaving former blind man to wonder if he was better off before this miracle. I know his story might feel uncomfortable, but that raises a profound question. Something like, what happens when miracle changes external circumstances of our lives without addressing deeper needs of our heart? If that's all about superficial outside, without touching inside. These characters in the book were given extraordinary gifts. They were given sight, life, healing. But those gifts alone did not bring them peace, fulfillment, and purpose. Their stories might remind us of the fact that physical miracles, while powerful, they are not ultimate solution. Deeper transformation is needed. Transformation of the whole body. True miracles are not just about being able to see, walk, or live again. They can become real miracles. They become real miracles when they transform us from within. And the greatest miracle is becoming a new person in Jesus Christ, becoming new child of God through Him. And that is when the miracle moves beyond physical change to eternal significance. Well, back to my swimming pool cleaner. And as I thought about broken bag in the cleaner, I realized that what is caught in the net, what is caught in the bag, they might represent something God has prepared for us. Whether it is people in our lives, whether it is our friends, our loved ones who are ready and waiting to hear the message of love. Just like fishermen, their nets are filled with fish. God has already prepared opportunity for us to share that good news of His love with those around us. Maybe they are the people caught in the bag, in the net. But there is a warning here for us. If we do not act when the opportunity comes, if we don't care of what is in the net or the bag now, then it might break. Just like my swimming cleaner's bag, if that is left unattended, too long, too full for a long time, it might burst. We might lose the chance to share the message with those who are ready. The real miracle is not just what happens in the moment, but the transformation, continuing transformation that takes place when we respond to God's call and share His love with others. The nets are full, but we need to act. We need to go out. Like Daniel said, we need to go out and reach out. We need to be faithful in sharing because God is always working in the lives of those around us, preparing them to receive His message of hope. So let's not just let this opportunity pass by, but be ready to share His love when time comes. So as we marvel at Jesus' miracle, let us remember that they are not just displays of power, but they are the invitation to transformation. And our response to transformation is critical as we are called to share the good news with the world and people around us. Amen.